I'm going to talk about, and based on my shared life experiences to discuss possibilities, there are common threads in each of these. And I'm a bureaucrat, so I fall into that hierarchy that is dysfunctional, right? I'm also a square peg in round holes because I'm an ex-advertising man, a venture capitalist, ended up being in public policy, and now I sit at the president's office in Sri Lanka, trying to resolve a post-crisis challenge of how to design a post-conflict Sri Lanka in terms of what kind of economic direction should this country be going in, what sort of infrastructure should we be putting back in to areas that were devastated by terrorism for 30 years. So the possibilities arising out of a crisis are the things I would like to share with you. So before I come to that, because I want to get your feedback and your inputs to, as to what the possibilities are for Sri Lanka, I want to share some personal crises that I have had, which has helped me to ponder on the possibilities, and I think you as creative people in different disciplines would appreciate that often we have design briefs or briefs that present itself to you in a way that a problem becomes the opportunity and actually resolves itself, because the straitjacketing of the problem helps you to become brilliant and apply your collective knowledge to come up with a solution that's like what we call brilliant. I'll take three instances. One is a national crisis. Second is there's an imposed crisis on us because of a colonial past. And a third is a personal crisis. And I'll add a business crisis, and how, in my experience in working in those four situations, actually we came up with solutions, design solutions that really was out of the box, and you know, gave everybody hope that really you can achieve a lot more when you have circumstances that are beyond your control. I'll start with, I think, taking a very personal journey, and please help me here and indulge me to share this story with you. Where I had 10 years ago, at the height of the dot-com boom and doing a whole bunch of investments in various different companies and flying around the world and being top of the world, suddenly I got whacked, bang, with a diagnosis of a pancreatic cancer. And I was like pretty mad with the man upstairs, he or she, so why now when I'm really at the top of my game? And I was 35, and I figured like it was unfair. And the doctor said, well, you know, what you have really needs to be operated right now. And sorry, you can't delay. And I was in Hong Kong, and I said to myself, no. If you're going to operate me, I need to know what my odds are of coming out of this. And fortunately, I had some friends and my secretary, we researched it, and we found out that nobody in Hong Kong had ever done surgery with a track record that was close to the world average of efficiency. Like there's a, I had a situation of pancreatic cancer, and the world average was 1 out of 30 patients die because of surgical complications. Right? And all the surgeons in Hong Kong were having 1 out of 20, 1 out of 12, and they were not close to the world average. So I said, okay, if I'm going to get operated, I want the Lamborghini mechanic to cut me, right? I better have the best guy. So who's got the #1 record? It was Dr. John Cameron at Johns Hopkins in Maryland. And he was 1 out of 100. So that's like, wow, 30 to 1, 100? That's like a 300% efficiency rate. Yeah, that's the guy I want. So the doctor in Hong Kong said, you're nuts. You know, that guy, he's written a book on pancreatic surgery. He's the chairman of the School of Surgery there. You're not going to get him. Just have more realistic expectations, Chris, right? Really into the operating theater, get this card, don't delay. I said, okay, if you can't get the number one, who's number two? Right. Number two was Dr. Murray Brennan at Sloan Kettering at New York. So can we get him? If you can't get the number one, what's his average? And his average was 1 out of 90. So I said, hey, those are the two guys, nobody else, right? And so there's a dream on, get going. Anyway, as things happen, I managed to get an appointment with John Cameron. Went and saw the gentleman pretty much a few days afterwards. And he was like this very gaunt-faced surgeon, typical surgeon, like some of you. No, not you. And he said, well, son, what you have is what you call the intrapapillary mucinous neoplasm. I said, what's that? Right? So I said, well, it's called an IPMN. It's like a Trojan horse. It's sort of metamorphosizing itself into a cancer, and you need to take it out. And you're lucky at your age, you've just caught it. So do surgery. So I said, so doctor, what's the procedure? Because I heard the mortality rate is very high. So no, we have perfected a system called the Whipple procedure, and we can do that. And we have had the best experience here. You come to the right facility, et cetera, et cetera. Thursday, are you set for surgery? So I said, well, can I get a second opinion? So he said, and this appointment was set up for me by a friend of mine, and he looked at me as if I was sort of, hey, I've sort of set aside time for you based on the introductions made, and you only yet made up your mind. But he didn't say that, but his face said it. So he said, anyway, I'll give you time. I understand your anxiety. Call my nurse and confirm whether you're coming in surgery or not. And then, as Providence had it, I, of course, went and had a crab cake, caught the train to New York, and basically went and saw Murray Brennan. And Murray Brennan was this very paternal, very nice man, and I felt instantly comfortable with the patient experience. Right? And Sloan Kettering had the beautiful reception room, like a hotel lobby, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when I saw him, and he says, doctor, he said, well, John was right. You need to do surgery. So I said, how long can I wait without doing surgery? He said, not too long. We need to monitor the thing, but the sooner you do it, the better it is. But I was not comfortable because he said, doctor, but everything what I've read tells me that even with surgery, the maximum life expectancy you can extend is 5 years. Without surgery, it's 2.5 years. So why should I spend $150,000 paying you guys and then spend another $100,000 in convalescing, spend $250,000 and then eat food like a parrot, 8 or 12 meals, and have a very debilitated lifestyle in order just to double my life expectancy from 2.5 years to 5 years. I might as well live my life, as well as I could do all the things that I never could do, and I'll kick the bucket in 5 years or 2.5 years. So he said, son, I suggest you do surgery, but it's your choice. So I went off and decided to take matters into my own hand, because I figured if I can extend the time frame it takes for me to do surgery, maybe there might be a cure. And there was Nautilus doing something, somebody else was doing something, and being a venture capitalist, I was always optimistic. Somebody's going to crack it, right? Because there's so much money being pumped in. And so I took control of my own problem and started designing my own medical protocol by researching things. Went to Mexico, went to a place called Tsunami, a friend of mine sent me there. And there, suddenly, I was told, hey, your immune system can beat this if you can actually clean your system out of all the toxins that you have in your system. And your body can fight it. So that's what I did. But then still, everybody's saying, hey, do the surgery, don't be mad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what did I do? I then happened to be at a point in time attending, I was pre-scheduled to go to Harvard Medical School, something else. Went there, I was not a doctor. I managed to get into a course that they had for surgeons who have graduated from Harvard Medical School, and that year, for my luck, they were doing advances in pancreatic surgical management. So kind of, wangled myself into the course and sat with these doctors, and these surgeons were arguing about as to what is the best way to do surgery, and that it takes about 160 surgeries for you to learn how to cut properly, right? So I then figured I was validated. Surgery was not the way to go. I would kick surgery out. I will redesign my life to clean the toxins out of my body and live as well as I could possibly live without toxins. And 10 years on, I'm still here, right? So now, that was a crisis. I had to think out of the box. I had to sort of challenge the conventional thinking and essentially refuse to be told that there's only one way of fixing that problem. So I chose an alternative way. The second crisis came about in 2004, Tsunami. And like my colleague here, I was then sitting in the president's office, and we had some 20,000 tourists all missing from a tsunami that hit us on Boxing Day. And the tourist board chairman, I happened to be the co-chairman of the SME sector and then the president's task force, told me, Chris, we just don't know how many tourists are in the country because we only have the numbers of the tour groups that have registered with the big travel agencies. But there are a lot of FIT travelers who've come into the country, and nobody knows how many of them are here. Plus, there are a lot of Sri Lankan expatriates who come back home for Christmas. They're all over the coast. We don't know how many, right? So I said, okay, I'll take on that challenge. And then, of course, all of the rescue groups are saying, hey, we can't sort of get an effective rescue operation going simply because the telecom system was down. So we came up with something very similar to what you came up with for the Haiti. We decided we'll use a mobile phone at the time. And we did an SMS campaign, and we said, okay, let's segment all the roaming telephones in the country. How many roaming phones are in the country? There was some 13,000 odd. Let's figure out how many guys received phone calls on Christmas Day. Let's track those numbers down and call those numbers and find out how many of them are, what their names are, where they were staying. Let's look at the number of phones that were not working after tsunami hit, and look at the number of phones that were working after the tsunami hit. We can assume the phones that are not working after the tsunami hit, the phones are dead, the battery is dead, possibly the person is not around. Or the phones that are working, obviously the person is surviving. So we managed to get two databases established. We sent an SMS to the ones that phones were working, and we got responses back, and we, I think, tracked 4,600 survivors from that thing. And then we managed to get to the Defense Ministry and get clearance to do tracking of the phone because we knew exactly the location ID. And that way we were able to direct people to go and give assistance. So that was, again, a problem. We write a piece of software, which we did very quickly. And we were able to get a database up on the internet where relatives and loved ones could actually see whether their friends have survived the tsunami. So we used the internet phone technology, and then we had very similar support infrastructure that was built for Haiti. Now, the third crisis that we had was the war. And we had 30 years of war, which just ended. Many of us in this room may not necessarily agree in the manner in which we concluded that war. But what that war has done has created an opportunity for us, because for 30 years, my country, Sri Lanka, has had 2/3 of its country underdeveloped, not developed, forest areas remaining as forest, beach areas remaining undeveloped as pristine beaches. Yes, there are landmines. Yes, there are wreckages of all kinds of war artifacts, but these things can be cleared. But there is pristine areas of the country untouched by modern development. And you have the whole country, for the first time, now looking to develop itself. Now we have World Bank, ADB, IMF, everybody else trooping to Colombo and saying, hey, you guys need to catch up. You need to catch up with the rest of Asia, develop yourself as fast as possible, we'll give you bucket loads of money, put trains, build cities, water systems, power, coal power plants. China is saying we'll build you 1,000 megawatts. India is saying, oh, we'll compete, we'll give you another 1,000 megawatts. And we are now having a whole bunch of people trying to drag our island down the same fossil fuel path of destructive development. And the business community that has been impatient with lack of development is, yeah, how quickly can we build the next coal power plant because the guys are making money. Architects like yourselves are all sort of running to get the next brief, and everybody, the entire construction industry is busy. And we are saying, sitting in government, hey, wait a minute. Here's an opportunity, a golden chance for Sri Lanka to look at the rest of the world and see where things have gone wrong. What are the bad practices that are around the world? What are the best practices around the world? Can we pause for a moment, hold our breath, and see whether we could rebuild Sri Lanka in a more holistic way? Because after all, we need to have harmony in our society, because we've had 30 years of war because of a sectarian violence and because of ethnic identity politics that was created by a colonial master, Britain, blame the English for everything, who basically came to Sri Lanka, colonized it for its resources, or as our earlier colleague in the morning said, our relatives. And what were those resources? It was a pristine forest, rainforest, that we had in the central highlands of Sri Lanka that was cut down, decimated totally, to plant a monoculture, single bush tea. And the Sinhalese people, who were the indigenous people of Sri Lanka, was saying, are you crazy? Clearing out this forest to plant a single bush called tea, because the forest is our watershed. We have words for it. I mean, you call it watershed. It's the home of our water. It's the home of our animals. It's the home of our gods. It's the home of our medicine. It's the home of our food. It's the home of our trees, the wood. So why do you want to cut that and plant a monoculture? So the first governor of Britain in Sri Lanka, and I read this when I went to England and was going through some of the records at the British Museum and the Public Library, said, he's writing back to Whitehall, the Sinhalese are posing to be a problem. Because of their Buddhist heritage, they are averse to commerce. And I remember the word averse to commerce. We need to do something about this. I seek your permission to bring slaves from South India. So they brought 1 million Tamil slaves from South India. We have Tamil people who lived with us for a lot longer, for over 10 centuries with us in the northern Sri Lanka. And we had a king who was Tamil, which the Sinhalese people accepted. So there were no issues between our two communities. And they synchronized with our culture. We're not going to cut the forest. So they brought these 1 million Tamils from South India. And these coolies were made to cut all these forests and plant tea. Now we are having famine. There's no water. The watersheds are completely depleted. We can't eat the tea, right? So we have a set of issues that have been presented to us, and we are living with that legacy, and we've been a country with 2,500 years of continuous kings who have basically used rainwater harvesting. We have the largest number of man-made reservoirs to harvest rainwater. We have a cascade system that harvests that water and for agriculture purposes. We have a Buddhist culture that believes in a symbiotic relationship with all sentient beings. We're not really chasing the almighty dollar or the rupee or wealth. So we have some very positive attributes from our culture, from our heritage. We have some great resources. It's a highly biodiverse island. But yet, all of that is being threatened now that we have got peace, because people want to design an economic model, an economic system that's going to be predicated by GDP metrics that would give us double-digit growth. And India, our closest neighbor, is sort of belting away as a BRICS economy to beat China. There's a race between the two. So they're all after the resources. And Sri Lanka is sitting on the fringe, on the sidelines there, and is getting dragged in. So the challenge that I have sitting where I sit in the president's office is, hey, pause, hold on. How can we get the best minds in the world, the most brilliant minds in the world, including Sri Lankan expatriates and others, to come and rethink out of the box how we could develop our country to be a shining model for the world, because it's a scalable, small enough island that's got all the attributes to be redesigned that could hopefully answer the question of Al Gore's inconvenient truth, or as Bill Gates, as recent as the TED conference in February, said, that still nobody's doing anything about climate change, and no government is yet moving in the direction of making a paradigm shift of a scalable nature. And he's talking thorium nuclear. And Shanghai World Expo is, out of all the 168 countries that are exhibiting there, only about 6 countries are talking about sustainable development as their vision for the world. And whole world seems to be, despite talking about renewable energy, alternative transportation system, could be the Toyota Prius, could be the Tesla, but they're still in the same paradigm of pushing the transport economy. We're still talking about commuting. We're still talking about shifting people between urban centers. We're still talking about building urban metropolises. So nothing has changed. All what you're doing is you just change the steam engine to electric car. You have information overload, you're creating fantastic things on the internet, but you're just getting people more information, creating more demand, more desire among the consumers. So it appears to us, sitting from where I sit and my colleagues in Colombo, having been clustered by a 30-year war, not knowing where the world has moved on with Twitter and Delicious and everything else, that really the world is still like Pied Piper was being followed by the rats. The whole world is just walking in the same direction, and nobody is thinking out of the box. Nobody is trying to make a paradigm shift. They think they're making a paradigm shift. Bill Gates, what is he talking about? He's talking about thorium nuclear power plants. I support thorium nuclear, but it's about creating still more energy to fuel the industrial complex. Nobody's talking about what our friend in the morning talked about, of making a shift in terms of lifestyle, not GDP, more than the happiness index. Maybe it's a sustainability index, human wealth development index, but those things still are within the construct of consumption, where we can probably get into a harmony index or something like that. So in closing, my request, and if you have the opportunity to speak during the next course of the 2 days, is for you to think about if, as architects and designers of multidisciplinary vocations, if you had a chance to rethink the design brief for a country, how would you write that brief? Right? How would you write that brief? And it's the brief that we need to write first, because the solutions are all there. The technology is there, the innovations are there, great minds have come up with all kinds of policy approaches, but unless you have the right brief, you know this as an architect, unless you have the right brief that describes the requirements of the user, the end user, you may build the wrong building. So we are struggling to write that right brief because there are so many options, so many paths that we can go down. But we would obviously like to go down the path of our own heritage, which is to simplify. So simplicity, less is more, get in touch with the things that we want to do. Do we need to work 365 days of the year and only have 2 weeks of vacation? Or do we like the Norwegian model or the Scandinavian model of 11 months of paternity leave? Right? I mean, let's look at some other things that we would want for our cities. Do we want transportation, superhighways, maglev, or do we prefer to have work at home, use the communications infrastructure, no need to sort of commute and burn up so much fuel? I mean, there are lots of questions to be asked. So I pose it to you. Please think about this. Here's an opportunity, Sri Lanka, small enough country, size of West Virginia. Here's a chance to actually do it right there, because we just come out of a conflict for 30 years. Half the country is still intact. And we wanted good systemic designers. And if you can be part of that, that would be, I think, helpful, not just from a perspective of Sri Lanka as a selfish person, but from a perspective of as a global citizen, because we are all interconnected, as you say. It's the ocean, that's the continent. So I leave that thought with you. I would ask you to think about it. Help us to write that perfect design systemic brief that could actually get the best practices from the world to help Sri Lanka lead the way for the rest of the world to follow. Thank you.